If you like what you got, then come on back. We'll be here. You see, fashions may change, but quality never goes out of style.
Levi Strauss & Company was born in the American West, and Westerners were among our early customers. They have been made with such high quality denim that's used that they are remarkably useful and durable for laborers, cowboys, anybody who's doing really hard wearing work. And we, as a brand, it chose a cowboy by the 1930s to use in our advertising. And we called that character the Saddleman. That image appeared not only on the labels of our products, but in advertising pieces. We have some amazing murals. They were silk screened and then glued on corrugated cardboard and shipped all over the American West. They really helped to create the myth of the American West that was so closely associated with the Levi's brand. In the 1930s, Levi's introduced their Western wear line, and they show our very popular Riders line of clothing. Levi's created a line of rodeo shirts that came in satin in a range of colors. Smile pockets are these. They have these round, almost look like smiles on a face. This one, which is an all-wool jacket, you can see that Levi Strauss Riders label. And then this piece, also a Riders item, but we know who wore it. Her name was Violet Mutter, and she was a Dust Bowl Okie. Our Spur Bites Levi's from 1890, very early 501, worn by a cowboy, has lots of wear from spurs at the bottom of the hem. They have details like patching on the right front thigh, where we can tell that the cowboy was right-handed and would have held his reins in his right hand. It's a Levi's late 1960s suit. It was owned by the president of the California Rodeo Association. Levi's rodeo line of clothes was popular enough to be worn by a number of rodeo stars, including Bertha Blancett, known as the most famous woman rider in rodeo. Her Levi's satin rodeo shirt is part of the collection at the Autry Museum of the American West. Look at this pearl button Western shirt, just like I'm wearing, but they've added a lot of bling. This is from the early 2000s when Lance Bass was part of NSYNC, and even comes with a pair of chaps with all of this bling on it. This Western look is a collaboration from 2010, Levi's and Pendleton. One of my favorite additions, a rivet at the sleeve opening. We don't have these in our modern Levi's trucker jackets anymore. The Levi's brand sponsored rodeo from as early as the 1930s. For someone who's a cowboy, the 501s were tough enough so that they lasted, but they wanted them to be particularly customized or adapted for use.
My whole family's kind of been in the rodeo industry. My great-grandfather was actually one of the first stock contractors to ever bring bucking horses and bucking bulls to the very first national finals rodeo back in the 50s. Yeah, I really like the 501 because that was the original jean. You know, back in the day, they rolled them up on the top of their boot. But for me, I really like the shrink to fit, the raw denim. There's not a tougher jean out there. One thing that is kind of something that I do, I take them to the dry cleaners and get a nice crease down the middle of them. And then other than that, I just wear them. You know, it's one of those things that, like, you get the raw denim and you get to see the portrait take place from the start to beginning.
One interesting note about our history is that the company and the Levi's brand actually influenced the Western imagery almost as much as the West influenced the company. So you get not only Levi's advertising, but you get Hollywood Westerns that are portraying their leading actors wearing Levi's.
The Black American West Museum started in 1971 by Paul Stewart, who grew up believing that there were no black cowboys. He traveled around to all the schools telling the history of people of African descent in the West and all the contributions that we made. A lot of stories you see in Hollywood were taken from these stories, although the color of the person's skin was hidden. The 20th century is when you really saw the surge of people wearing denim. Levi being one of the early companies, you see more of that with the cowboys. So really, the idea of cowboys wearing Levi's came from Hollywood.
Growing up, Levi's were the standard, I guess, of fashion and culture and history and tradition. We decided that when my wife and I would get married, she allowed me to actually wear the Levi 514 during our ceremony. A Western type wedding has just always been something my wife and I had in mind because we have a lot of respect for where we come from. I grew up in a very small town that only had one red light. And I loved sports. I always wanted to be outside and play football with all my cousins, all my brothers. So I believe with the qualities that gets put into these jeans, they definitely have the opportunity, as long as you take care of them, to last longer than other jeans, for sure.
Levi's are still used in modern movies and films. One of my favorite recent ones is the movie Brokeback Mountain. That look of the American cowboy hasn't changed much from the time cowboys were wearing Levi's back in the 1930s. It's something we still do today.